Greetings and salutations to one and all, and welcome to this week's Revitalise Meets interview, where I get the opportunity to meet business professionals, global connections, and some key decision makers in the world of business. We're going to delve into the chapters of their book, of their business book. We're going to find out more about what makes them tick, why did they start in their business, and also some top tips for good measure shared with everybody from our guests. Now, as always, it's a great pleasure to be welcoming along many of our guests along to this series. But I've got to know this gentleman really well over the past probably 2 years, really. The time has actually flown over, but he's been helping many people in the world of HR, bridging the gap between employer to employee, supporting businesses and companies across the country with his expertise and his knowledge from the HR industry, that is human resources. Can you please welcome with us the one, yes, but as always, the only, Mr. Stephen Allan of Concept HR Solutions. Stephen, how are you today?
I am very good. How are you?
I am very well indeed. It's took a while to get you here,
It
but
has indeed.
eventually got you to come along.
Yeah. It
How are
has
you
indeed.
feeling about that?
All good. All good. Thank you very
Brilliant.
much for having me along. Really
Oh,
appreciate getting the
you're more
chance
than
to
welcome,
have a
Stephen.
chat with you. So yes, all good.
More than welcome. Let's start as we mean to go on. As always, these little chats, these little interviews, is always to try and find out a bit more about you and, why did you start on the business journey you are. So please, would you mind sharing with everybody who's watching and listening today a bit about your business and why did you start your business?
Sure. So I'm an HR consultant, and I work alongside business owners, providing them with the advice and guidance that they need from an HR and employment law perspective, which enables them to effectively manage their people and also protect their business at the same time. I think historically HR has been seen as a function that sometimes gets a bit of a sort of bad rep. Sometimes seen as a function that deals with the admin, it deals with contracts, it deals with paperwork, or as the person who's yielding the rule book, telling people what they can and can't do, and is where an employee gets sent to when they've done something wrong. But I focus on working with my clients to help them understand the link between great people practices, creating a great employee experience, and the impact that ultimately has on employee engagement and fundamentally how it affects the bottom line of their business performance at the end of the day. So whether it is looking at the legalities of employing somebody, so whether it's somebody looking to take on the first employee or whether they're growing their business, helping them manage a really tricky employee relations case, which can be quite daunting if you're not used to managing or having to deal with that type of thing within your business, or putting in place an HR strategy that sits alongside your overall business strategy. These are all sort of things that I would work with business owners on, helping them to navigate those challenges and successfully grow their business and work through periods of change. So at the moment, I work with a variety of clients across Scotland, predominantly businesses that don't have access to their own internal HR function. But I have also been working with some in-house HR teams on larger projects, which has been really quite exciting. And what I found is that my client base has become really quite varied since I started the business up. So I've now got clients in hospitality, engineering, IT, retail, aviation, the care sector, as well as others. So it has become really, really varied. And for me, that's probably one of the best parts about what I do now, is that I get to see and get exposure to so many different industries, and you're just continuing to learn so many new things that across that journey. So it's fantastic for me. I started the business up at the beginning of 2022, so the beginning of last year, and I decided to start up the business after finding myself in a redundancy situation for the third time in the space of 4 years. There's, to be honest, there's only so many times that you would ever really want to find yourself in that type of situation. So I felt, when it happened for the third time, I felt it was time to probably take back a bit more control of essentially what is my future and my work and my work and my life and career and everything else that goes along with that. I always thought about consulting probably towards the later stages in my career. I never for a minute thought it's something I would be doing right at this point in time, but it was just one of those things that was. It was a risk. It wasn't an easy decision to make, and I was really torn about whether to go down the consulting route or whether to continue in employment by going and finding another job. But ultimately, this is the decision that I took, and I'm 18 months in, and it's been incredibly challenging, but incredibly rewarding at the same time. And I'm really proud of the business that I've started to build over the last 18 months.
Steve, it's a great journey to have, and I think when everybody gets into a position where I suppose put in a position where they have to make a decision,
in
regards to being made redundant. Did you expect that to happen, or was that a bolt out the blue? Did you have to use this word, pivot quite quickly on that one?
It wasn't expected. It did come quite unexpectedly on this occasion, to be honest. And just exactly what you've said, I did have to pivot very quickly. I didn't have a lot of time to begin to get the ball rolling in terms of somebody who was wanting to perhaps had some sort of aspiration to set up their own business. And I think if you get into that place where it's something that you would like to do, you begin to think ahead and you begin to think forward about the steps that you need to take to be able to kind of make that move and take that step. But for me, it was this, by the time I really sort of settled on making the decision and coming to the end of my last employed role, I think you were really only talking about a period of 6 weeks. So it was literally from one extreme to the other in a very short space of time.
And I'm just curious as well, because many people, when they go into a business journey themselves, did you hit the ground running straight away, or was there a stage at the beginning of your business where you were just trying to find the building blocks? Did you have like a setup period? Was it the first 6 months, 12 months? How did that work for you?
It was literally, I would probably say I had maybe about the first month, so probably about January at the beginning of 2022, to start to put some things in place before really kind of going out and working with any clients. I definitely wouldn't say I hit the ground running. There was a lot of learning. It was a huge thing to try and adapt from being employed for the last 20 years to being self-employed in such a short space of time. So all of a sudden I had to learn about networking, I had to learn about marketing, I had to learn about managing finances within a business, how to write copy for a website and how to price the services that I was offering. And I had to try and develop those sort of skills and get up to speed with them pretty quickly. And it didn't happen quickly, to be quite honest and quite frank about it. It took months. But it's just all sort of part of that process, I suppose.
And it's a big challenge to go through. And we talk about challenges and, looking at that sort of time from creating the business to where you are right now, what's been the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome, and how have you achieved to overcome that challenge, if you have?
I think the biggest challenge, I think for me, there's probably two that I would say were my sort of biggest challenges. One was networking, and we've spoke about this on numerous occasions now, and it was probably the basis of the first conversation I think that we ever had before. Was that I knew when I started the business up that I would need to go and actively network, and the thought of it, it just wasn't for me. It just scared me so much, and for me, I think it was a lot to do with what my perception of networking was all about. And at that point in time, when I started the business up, networking to me was going into a room full of people that I didn't know and trying to sell them what it was I was, what it was I was offering within the business. And the thought of having to go and do that just was incredibly uncomfortable to me. But it wasn't really until probably about sort of kind of the best part of 9 to 10 months into actually having started the business. And again, you know, I've said this, you know, kind of to yourself before, Revitalise has played a huge part in my networking journey, certainly in the sort of kind of, you know, kind of the last couple of years, because it really helped me change my perception about what networking was all about. And it was fundamentally about building relationships, getting to know people, and people also getting to know me, and what it is that I do. And through that, I've been able to build a really, really great support structure around about me. And I do sometimes wonder, if I hadn't, you know, kind of been fortunate enough to sort of kind of, you know, be involved in Revitalise, you know, what would that look like now? Because it's given me so much in terms of being more confident about myself, being more confident about getting up and speaking about the business, what it is that I do, and how I can probably articulate that a lot better when I'm attending networking events.
It's funny when you hear about so many people saying about, you know, even just networking in itself, they don't, you know, they see it as a part of their business. Sometimes they don't see it as part of their business, but also part of their marketing structure, like you've been mentioning through all that there. And I think it's so important that we take a time to reflect upon how that fits into your business to start with. Many people think it's going to happen straight away, but it does take time to build up that sort of trust, understanding, loyalty. You know, a bridge the gap with the experience that you're bringing to the table, and also those employers or those companies actually knowing exactly how you do it and what you do with it as well at the same time. One thing is, we talk about the challenges, and well done in regards of what you've done so far and how you've really bridged that gap. We had a little bit of a technical issue there, and apologies everybody. We've had to try and just switch it back on. It was just going on and off, so apologies if you were missing out on anything there. How have we look at the virtual way that we work now and what we're doing today, working online, and yours is very a people-to-people industry. You know, you're sitting with somebody individually, with a group, or with a team of people around you. How have you adapted your business to be more for virtual and for in-person? Have you adapted to cover both areas, Stephen?
I think that was something that happened quite naturally for me in terms of setting the business up, to be honest. You know, I probably a massive part of the work that I do can be done remotely, and it has been done remotely because of the location of some of the clients that I do work with. Some of the clients that I work with are based up in, you know, as far afield as Dundee, and you know, that client in particular was probably one of the first that I actually started working with, and it's not always feasible to you know, kind of depending on the work that needs to be done. It's easier to manage when you have got that level of flexibility between working in person and working flexibly. But where the work is done, you know, kind of remotely, whether it is by Teams or whether it's by email or whether it's by phone, it's still quite important for me to sort of kind of have those regular face-to-face check-ins. So I will take the time to book in, for example, a quarterly check-in with a client that I don't get the chance to see on a regular basis in person. And ultimately, if they need me to be there, then it's just about how you can be as flexible as you can to meet the need of that particular client, I suppose.
Have you found though as well, working online, has that created more opportunities for you, or has it created sort of more further afield opportunities for you? Are you getting more people working with you on an online basis?
I think it has. I think it's opened up opportunities to potentially work further afield. What I've seen recently is some more local businesses getting in touch, which has been really, really great. But with that, if I'm just sort of concentrating on what sort of the local vicinity and in and around sort of Ayrshire, which is where I'm based, then I'm losing out on the potential to work with a lot of, you know, kind of really, you know, really great businesses and really great clients. So again, it's a wonderful tool, and I think that probably you know, again, and most people will probably have experienced this, as the pandemic, I think, has really propelled us in terms of how we are able to work virtually. And I think you probably wouldn't just be as far on with things if we didn't have tools like this at our disposal, and it just allows us to have that sort of further outreach to people that we may perhaps not have been able to work with in the past.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing. There's people that have never known you were there before.
Yep.
Now there's more opportunity that people see you virtually, visibly, more often, more regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what people are sort of embracing now more than anything else. And thanks for sharing that. I think a lot of people now look at getting the balance between the two correct, because there should be a good
Absolutely.
measure online versus virtual.
Yep.
Sorry, virtual versus in person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, again, I don't really think there is anything that ever will really be a true substitute for sitting with somebody face to face. And I get, as I say, it's for me that is ideally the preference, and it's the way I've always worked. So probably working more virtually has that is probably the space that I've had to flex more into. But as as the business has progressed, it's probably how I find myself doing most of my work is remotely.
Brilliant. And it's great just to comment as well. We've got Ian McPherson online with us as well, and he's just agreeing with you. Your perception of networking was probably quite negative. However, networking done correctly is so important by creating a presence. So thanks for your comments there, Ian. And we've actually got a question from Mark Doricote, who's actually a question for yourself there, Stephen.
Yep.
Did COVID really push you into a virtual marketplace?
For myself, COVID, when in the really sort of the midst of the pandemic, I was in an employed role, so I was in house at the time. But it did see, even in that instance, it saw us having to work very, very differently, and in terms of the approach and the things that how we were working with, kind of the internal teams, because we could, it's the same as the vast majority of people at that point, to be honest. We couldn't travel, we couldn't meet other people face to face. So I think that experience has allowed me to probably take a lot of that with me when it came time to set the business up. So, kind of being able to work collaboratively with people virtually. I think if I didn't have that experience during the pandemic, I think I would have found it more challenging when it came time to start the business up, had I not had that experience and that exposure at the time.
It's interesting how it evolves you, and it gives you more experience under the belt to move forward as well. It's such an important part to have. And Mark, thanks for commenting there in the chat area for us, and Ian for joining us. Please stay there, and if you've got any other questions, please pop into the chat area for us both. That'd be greatly appreciated. Within your industry of HR, it's such a vast area to cover with human resources. If someone's listening today, what would be your top 3 tips of your industry or for your business? What would you share with everybody, Stephen?
My top 3 tips, if you just give me 2 wee seconds, I'm just pushing this door closed. Typical somebody arrives at the door when the dogs go mental. Top 3 tips for myself. Number 1 that I would probably say is really, as an employer, do your best to set your team up for success from day one. Do the basics well. Even when it comes to things like recruitment. So what does your recruitment processes and practices look like? Do they have a great experience? Do you keep in touch with them? Do you keep them updated? Or is it a case of they apply, they're left hanging and they don't get an outcome? When they're getting started, do they have everything that they need to get started from day one? So is that a contract or is it an offer letter? Thinking about how you onboard them, how you train them, what information do they need to be set up well from day one? Who's going to be looking after them? And what are the things that you're doing as the employer to make sure that they settle in and they've got the support that they need, and that they want to stay with you? I speak to a lot of clients, and again, it's something that you see quite frequently at the moment, and in the marketplace in general is a real challenge around about retention. And I think that if kind of retaining people, I think if you really focus on a great onboarding experience and training your people well, making sure they are set up for success from day one, it really reduces the impact of high turnover figures. And another thing that I would always encourage people to think about is just to remember that any applicants and new starts that you've got coming into your business or applying to work within your business, them, their family, their friends could potentially be your future customers. So how people are treated can really go a long way and have a huge impact on your brand as an employer. Secondly, for me, is really take the time to understand the culture in your business. Take the time to listen to what your team have got to say, have regular check-ins, have regular conversations, and act on their feedback. That can really give you a lot of insight to what's actually happening within your business, and understanding what's happening on the ground. Really think about the culture that you're creating as a business owner, and is your organisation, is your workplace a safe space for people to speak up when they feel that something might be wrong? Do they have the confidence to tell you when something has went wrong or they've made a mistake, and how they can put that right? And are they freely able to ask for help and support? And or is there a fear of being punished if something goes wrong, or being seen as not being capable of doing the job? I think that being able to create that sort of psychologically safe workplace is so important, and it has a real impact on employee well-being, and again, ultimately, really can impact on the retention of your staff and the cost to the employer. And then thirdly is stay up to date. Just do what you can to stay up to date on what your responsibilities are as an employer. In recent years, and with the pandemic, and coming out the other side of it, the amount of change that we've seen in the HR and employment law space has been huge, and it's continuing to change quite frequently. We're continuing to see new legislation coming into play. From again, we've seen it this year. We're continuing to see it going into next year and beyond. And some of the recent developments and things that that you're seeing at the moment is things like flexible working rights from day one, carers leave, extended redundancy protection for those that are on maternity, paternity, and adoption leave. There's still a lot happening in that space, and what you wouldn't want to find happening is some a piece of legislation kicking in and taking effect, and that you're not aware of it, and you potentially end up with a really difficult situation on your hands. And I think the only add-on that I would say there is, and this isn't a plug for me, but find a really reliable source of information, and whether that is an external HR consultant. That doesn't mean that you need to buy from them. One thing that I do at the moment is I kind of send out regular updates to my clients each month in terms of developments and things like that. So it can be a really, really great source of information, and just making sure that you're on the front foot. And if something does happen in your business, don't leave it too late before you start to address it, or you pick you get in touch with somebody to try and help you resolve it. Again, I've worked with some clients where they have had an issue, and it's been left it's been left a little bit too late before they've actually done anything to address it. And when things get to that stage, it becomes a lot more difficult to try and resolve. And when you're working with if your organisation is a small team of people, the impact of a situation like that can be pretty huge.
Some good points there, Stephen. I think, from first off, setting up the success, I think it's so important to have systems and processes in place in any business, either if you're working for yourself, have a team around you, or working in a company itself. Number two, understanding your team, understanding the culture, listening to feedback from your team members, and externally, understanding their friends and family. And also, I think it's like an open door policy,
Yep.
having that open door mentality to support your team. And number three, the responsibilities, the industry insights. I think there's so many, like even your sort of newsletter or updates, you can always tap into people's experience and knowledge
Yep.
to make sure you're kept up to speed with the responsibilities that you have as an employer or as an employee, knowing that you're ticking all the boxes that you need to have on that as well. And thank you for sharing that. And we'll make sure to put those 3 top golden tips in the comment boxes after today's interview as well. And
sure.
I think it's so important that little golden nuggets of golden tips, Stephen,
absolutely,
are used. Mark's just put a little comment on there as well. Having employed individuals virtually on a work from home basis, I'd found it incredibly hard to bond and include them within my company's culture, which is usually done much more easier in person. But do you have any suggestions or tips when hiring virtually for WFH? Apologies for the abbreviation, but the WFH
working from home, I would assume.
Thank you. There it is.
Yeah, so there we go.
I thought it was. I wasn't too sure I should say it or not, but thank you.
I think the I think and again, Mark, you probably will have tried a lot of this, I would imagine. I think it is keeping in touch. It is making sure that it's just trying to sort of replicate that in-person experience to being online, and just thinking about, and just not missing really any key steps. So again, if you're looking about hiring virtually, how what tools are you utilizing to enable a really slick recruitment process? Are you keeping in touch with the candidates as you're going through that recruitment process? Again, onboarding, what does that, how can we really sort of try and replicate that process as the best that we can? I think it is a challenge. I think it is something that we probably still are finding quite difficult. But I think it is just about, for me, it's certainly about keeping in touch with people, trying to have those those in-person events as well where you can. And I know depending on logistics, it might not necessarily be possible. But I think that's probably the main thing I could say on that, to be honest, just now, is just try and create the best processes that you can for working virtually.
Stephen, thanks so much. I hope that answered your question, Mark, and thanks so much for asking the questions in the group chat as well. It keeps it quite interactive during today's meeting as well, so thank you for that. From when we talked about advice, we've talked about adapting, we've talked about challenge and achievements, we've gone into the likes of why you set up the company in the first place. We look at the biggest learnings that we have and what we learn on a daily basis. How do you self-reflect? Do you use a lot of training? You're quite an oracle of knowledge, you might be saying, Stephen. And how do you take time out to make sure you are getting the right information? How do you get the right resources for you to learn and gain from that?
I would probably say I've naturally been quite a reflective person anyway. I do always, kind of any time I've maybe done a piece of work or I've done a project, I do then sort of kind of take the step back and just kind of look at, right, okay, well, what did go well, what didn't go perhaps 100% according to plan, and how could we perhaps do that differently again next time. I do tend to read a lot, and I think more so in probably about the last sort of kind of 9 months as well, so I'm currently studying my ILM level 5 in coaching and mentoring as well, and that has been a huge piece in terms of reflecting on my own self-awareness and the things that I would need to consider when I'm coaching somebody, and I think it is quite important just to take that time out to really just sort of kind of reflect on what kind of what's been and where things are where you feel things are going next. A trap that I used to fall into, I found myself falling into quite easily, was probably comparing myself to other people and what they're doing, and have I stopped doing it completely? Nope. But I do put a lot more focus on concentrating on me, where I'm, what I'm doing, and where I'm taking my business, and just trying to be that little bit better every day, and just taking those small steps moving forward. A really good connection, an ex-colleague of mine had put me in touch and directed me to a YouTube video by a gentleman called Karan Rai, who is a coach in that sort of workspace, and it was entitled, the YouTube video was entitled "You Cannot Outdo Who You Are Being," and that phrase has really stuck in my head, and I always sort of kind of reflect back on that, on that phrase, and it has encouraged me to be a lot more conscious about the actions that I'm taking, the decisions that I'm making, whether it's personally, whether it's professionally. I'm also a really big fan of Stephen Bartlett. And I listen to a lot of his podcasts. And I've no since long finished reading one of his books, Happy Sexy Millionaire. And not that I've got any aspirations to be a happy, sexy millionaire, but it was. I came across it on LinkedIn, and I had been listening to the audio version. Kind of when I was driving back and forward to a client, and there'd been so many light bulb moments in that book for me personally. And again, really sort of thinking about how and where I'm spending my time and what are the things that I'm prioritizing, whether that is in work or whether that's also outside the work. And he's got a really great analogy in there about the amount of chips that we would have to play on a roulette wheel or play on a board, and the number of hours that we would have in a lifetime. And it's making me really a lot more conscious in terms of where I'm now spending my chips and where they're actually going. So I think that that's the main sources for me in terms of reflection, and a lot of it does resonate quite strongly with me. So
it's good you're taking a bit of time for personal development, listening to certain key people, key influencers, to listen to how they do it.
Yeah.
I mean, Stephen Bartlett is a great one to listen to. Some great advice, some great knowledge. Again, a great podcast as well. You learn a lot from that, and I do know myself get a lot from those sort of areas and those podcasts that you listen to as well. And thanks for sharing that. I think a lot of people in business don't take the time to do the self-reflection, don't take the time to reflect upon where they are and where they're heading to. And it's part of their business journey. Take time out for themselves. They're focused 100% just on the business happening. Just don't take time out to say, right, okay, what am I doing? Am I doing the right things? Am I preparing myself to make myself stronger, to take me to the next level as well? Thank you for sharing everything today. But what's the next step for you? What's around the corner for yourself, Stephen? What's the next door of opportunity for yourself?
I think for me, it's over the it's continuing really just raising awareness of the business. It's still on the grand scale of things, still quite early doors, so there's still quite a lot of work to do there. So that will continue to be a focus of mine. And then as I get into 2024, then the plan is to begin to introduce a coaching element into the services that I'm able to offer in the business as well once I've completed my qualification. And again, it's probably one of the kind of working with people and seeing them grow, learn and develop was one of the most rewarding parts of working in HR in-house for me. And then moving to being self-employed, you don't necessarily get the same opportunity to do that as frequently. So, kind of when I got the opportunity to study the course, I absolutely sort of grabbed it with both hands because it enabled me to, start to spend time in that space again. And it's something that I've been really, really enjoying. So I think it'll be quite nice and a really nice complementary service to be able to introduce as the business just continues to grow and expand. So.
Yeah, because you've got to grow, you've got to expand, and I think when you put the right foot forward, you're going to get that as well. And I think the right team you're bringing around you, and the people that you're working with, is you can see all that work you've been putting in, the ground roots, Stephen, upwards, how it's sort of affecting your business.
Yep.
Now, everybody's been watching today and listening, of course. We've had Ian McPherson, we've got Mark Doricourt online there as well. How can they make contact with you? What's the best route of action of picking up the phone or send you a message through our social media networks? What's the best way of contact?
I will pop the details into the chat for my digital business card. So my digital business card has got all my contact details, telephone, email, and you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. It's got all the details for my socials in there as well. So I will pop that in, and that will be the best way for anybody to get in touch.
Brilliant. And as Stephen said, please make sure you check this post out afterwards on LinkedIn Live. We'll put all the details inside the comment boxes below, so you can interact. You can start the conversation with Stephen. You can interact with some of the people who have asked questions today as well and start those conversations a bit further as well. So really important that we keep the conversations flowing. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for sharing a spotlight, some insight into your business journey so far, and sharing that everybody's been listening online.
No, much appreciated. Thank you very much for having me. Like I said, it's been great to come along and have a chat with you and share the hints and tips and a bit about my journey to date. So, no, thank you.
No, you're more welcome. Thank you very much to everybody who's been watching and listening today to Revitalise Meets. Please stay tuned or subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is Revitalise Connecting People. You subscribe to the channel and be kept up to date with all of the interviews that are coming up over the next few weeks. But we've got over 100 business owners and key decision makers online on the channel that can help you with your business. They might answer a question. And as always, you can interact with us with the Business Club directory on the Revitalise website, most importantly, as well. But thanks very much to everybody for sharing and for joining us today. Again, great spotlight. Thanks again, Mr. Ian McPherson. Thank you, Stephen and Lee. Sounds like a musical theme there, Stevens and Lee. But thanks very much to everybody who's been watching and listening. Don't forget, push the button, subscribe, and check out the comment boxes below. But stay tuned. Next week, we'll have another business owner. We're going to be a day later. It's going to be on Tuesday at 12 o'clock. And then every week, we'll hopefully be inviting a business owner or key decision maker along for a wee chat, a wee brew, and open up the conversation a bit further to discover more opportunities. For me and Stephen, have a great rest of the week, and we look forward to seeing Revitalise Meets very, very soon once again. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.